GT Play here is a simplified interface that we are hosting on the web, either on our services, so provided by our services, or installed in the customer's architecture. And it's basically a simplified interface for the GT suite, so the GT suite that allows for building models and running simulations and exploring results. And it basically focuses on that, focusing on setting up the parameters for the simulation, running the simulation, and exploring the results.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the GT Tech Talk podcast. Today's an exciting episode. I'm joined by my co-host Lalit, and we have two special guests. We have Bruno and Evripidis, and they're going to be talking to us about web application development and the product that GT Suite offers, which is GT Play. So why don't we go ahead and start with introductions? Bruno, maybe you want to.
Sure. Hi, I'm Bruno Guerrero. I'm living in the south of France, in Toulouse. So I'm in the Toulouse office of GT. I've been studying web applications and I've been working in this field since the beginning of my career 13 years ago. And I've been with Gamma Technologies since 3 years ago as an application engineer on the GUI side, like the user interface side, and mainly responsible for GT Play feature specification, design, and testing.
Hello, I'm Evripidis. I live in Athens, Greece, and I've been with Gamma since 2020, mainly working on GT Play, among other projects. And yeah, I finished the computer science department of the University of Athens, and I've been working mainly with web technologies and Java and backend all my career.
All right, thanks for the introduction. So let's get into the topic. So the topic for today is how model-based engineering is evolving with the advancement in web and cloud technologies. So why don't we go ahead and give a brief background about this project?
Sure. Maybe we can explain a little bit what we will be talking about. GT Play here is a simplified interface that we are hosting on the web, either on our services, so provided by our services, or installed in the customer's architecture. And it's basically a simplified interface for the GT suite, so the GT suite that allows for building models and running simulations and exploring results. And it basically focuses on that, focusing on setting up the parameters for the simulation, running the simulation, and exploring the results.
Evripidis, is there anything you'd like to add on to that?
No, I think that mostly covers it. I mean, the whole idea is to provide that simplified and always-on view that the user can explore GT Suite in a non, let's say, expert user way.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think Lalit touched on a point that I think is interesting. So we have our kind of standalone GT Suite application that users typically install on their computers and run their models. But we see this move towards the web and towards hosting simulation capabilities on a server and using that instead. So can you walk us through what is behind that trend? What are some of the interesting motivations that are pushing us towards that?
Right. Like you're saying, this is a web installation, so a remote installation. This means that contrary to a standard application that you will have on your computer, we don't have the need for an installation. The only thing you need is a web browser to access this software. So this helps spreading the usage of the software and making it accessible to anyone. On top of that, we also have this ability to provide an interface that is suited for tablets and mobile. So if you are on the go, it will be more convenient to access, again, these simulations or these results. We also use this opportunity to kind of centralize the models, the results, etc., and making accessible to all the users within a company. So it helps with what we call democratization, basically, of the models. And in that sense, what we call the model architect, so the model developer, the one that will construct the model, will be able to curate kind of the contents of what will be available within the model in terms of parameters. So curating the number of parameters that will be interesting to this or this end user, and as well as the results, to make sure that the end user can focus on the result. And all of this is made available through, well, again, having a web application that can centralize all this data and kind of provide a simplified interface, again, to the end user.
Yeah, so you mentioned very great points about hosting this on a web as opposed to a traditional desktop application. Can you elaborate more on how this model architect and end users are connected, and how it increase or improves the accessibility and usability of our software?
Well, basically, currently, if you are using a, let's say, a traditional installation architecture, everyone will have their model on their own computer. This means that the architect will have built their model on their computer, and then they will need to have a way to share it with everyone. It could be a remote folder, etc., that the end user would download on their end or just copy and paste on their own computer, so that they can work on top of that. And it can be prone to mistakes. Let's say if you are using a model that someone else has built, you may be modifying this model, modifying parameters that shouldn't be modified, etc., etc. So the model architect here will be able to first set up the whole model and make it sure that it won't be updated or modified by anyone. And it will be able to, like I said, in the what we call the case setup. So basically the parameters, define the parameters that are interesting and the parameters that may not be modified. Define the default values also of these parameters if it may be relevant. And again, as I said, this will be true for the results also. So if you have lots and lots of plots as a result of a model, the model architect will be able to say only these 10 or these 15 plots will be really interesting to the end user. And so it would be able to prepare those plots, update them along with the model. Everything will be stored in what we call the model library in GTplay. And so the end user just have to click on either create a simulation or just access the result itself. And so they will be able to basically access what the model architect considers to be the most interesting parts of the model and of the result to them.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's a great overview of the way it works and the benefits that it provides as opposed to the traditional desktop application.
Yeah, I think one thing that was interesting was that you mentioned that this is usually hosted on a server, and I was kind of curious to know, is this server, does whoever using, GT Play, do they have to provide the server, or do they have to set it up, or could it be set up on a remote server and basically whoever's interested is given access to? How do we envision this kind of playing out usually?
Well, we can provide the three options basically. The first one will be providing the software by ourselves. so by the company. This is a model that you can see on various web applications, actually. It wouldn't be installed on your architecture or on your own server or anything. It will be provided by the company directly. So you just have to connect to a specific address on the web, and you will have access to the software. In that sense, the end user, well, the customer doesn't have to provide a server or anything. The second option will be for them to provide their own architecture. This means that this server won't be located on within their offices. It will be, again, on the cloud, but it will be managed by them directly. This helps a little bit with customers when they want to have a little bit of control over what they do with the architecture. And also on our end, it helps supporting the installation by saying, okay, we will need this project or this service on this cloud architecture to be able to make it run. And the third option is what we call on-prem. And basically, this means that they will use a server that will be located within their office. And in that case, the whole installation will be done on their end. They will have the control over every element of the server without having to use pre-made products by the cloud providers.
And Evripidis, you had mentioned that when we first started this, the idea was that we want GTPlay to be easily installed on different architectures. We're kind of fortunate that we have you on this call because you were one of the people who were there from the beginning. Walk us through what was GTPlay like when it was first introduced and how it evolved, and sort of the stages that, you know, that are really important when we're thinking about web-based application development.
All right. So that's a big question. I'll try to keep it short. So yeah, I joined Gamma around 2020, and it was because of the GTPlay project. Back then, Damien had created this like idea prototype of having GTs on the web, like as simple as possible for someone with no GT experience to be able to basically change some parameters, run some models, get some results. Like initially it was like, I think 3 screens. You had your case setup, like selection of models, case setup, run, get results, and that was it. That was the initial scope. We did a quick prototype and it was working rather nicely. So we kept building on that, adding features slowly as needed. Initially, we had like limited support for plots, for example, that we were showing because we had to use another technology altogether to show the plots. And slowly we basically are building on top of adding features as needed, both to case setup and to the, let's say, GTPOS equivalent results viewing. And more as well as that can take advantage basically of the fact that GTPlay is a centralized, always-on server. APIs, for example, and all that stuff that we'll talk soon, I guess, about. Yeah, so the whole project was began in 2020. By 2020, version 2022, I think was the first one we released it. And we've been expanding it ever since.
Yeah, that's a great overview of the whole project. I just want to take a step back and want to explore more about this trend towards web and cloud-based technologies in engineering simulation. So do you see this trend for other engineering tools as well out there? And how will this change the workflow for users and accessibility to the software, like new users, where there's a steep learning curve for a complex software like us? So does it improve that usability for new users?
Yeah, I believe you said it all, actually. Indeed, we know that having software installed on computer, especially when it comes to engineering and model creation, etc., it can be very, very complex. It can be overwhelming also for an end user. You just drop him on the computer and then you have this big interface with lots and lots of options. It can be not only difficult to learn, but also it can be overwhelming, a little bit confusing, etc., etc. Mainly because it's it's a huge and complete application. When we talk about the web, we have this benefit again of having some freedom, I would say, in the design to begin with. We can make sure that since we have two different applications, we can make sure to have the web version of this application reduced to the essential features, I would say, to the end user to make sure that they will use only what's needed for them. And we also have this possibility of making it more appealing visually, of course, since web is something that we can make run again on tablets, on mobiles, etc., etc. We can make sure that the layout is adjusted and what we call responsive, basically, so that we can make sure that again it will be displayed nice, that the workflow of the user flow, when he will travel from one page to another, everything will be smooth for them and intuitive. And I do believe that this is what will make engineering in the web more widespread in the future.
Yeah, if I can add a bit, I mean, I don't think the desktop applications, but at least for engineering tools, are going away. I mean, there's complex applications that sometimes require a desktop application. I think what we're trying to do here is like lower the entry requirements to get into that application. You don't have to install anything. You don't have to know anything beforehand. It's a simple UI. You go in, you press a couple of buttons, you have a simulation running. After that, you can get the models there, open it into your desktop application, and really work with the engineering team and all that. But it's maybe a different use case, the simplified, let's say, use case.
I appreciate you clarifying on that. Since we're on the topic of use cases, one thing that Evripidis mentioned that I thought was pretty interesting is that it's hosted, GTplay is usually, and these web application development tools are usually hosted on a server and it's always on. And so something that I think that's pretty interesting is that we can use it to maybe someone as a test engineer or someone in design, they can use it to kind of test out different parameters and see how their system would respond to these different parameters. But also, I think one interesting use case might be is that you have your actual physical system set up, and then you create a digital twin of it that is always continuously running. And so this would help with sort of proactive maintenance. And so, other than instead of responding to something happening, you're always kind of monitoring your system and seeing kind of the loads that it's kind of going through. And I was just kind of curious to see if that was a use case that we've seen, and how has that been with GT Play?
Absolutely, yeah. This is something that we're seeing quite a lot, and we have lots of requests to make it a little more streamlined, again, to make it maybe a little more automated, etc. But we definitely are seeing people and customers wanting to have their telemetry data used within GT Play, and so that everyone can maybe play around with it again to make sure that to, like you said, proactively test their model, proactively test that failures may happen in different conditions, etc., etc. And again, since this is a web application, like you said, always on, this can be spread all around the world. So if you have a team on a continent and you have a team on another country or another continent, you may have different teams, so specialized in different applications, obviously, but also you will be able to have them use the data that has been collected through measures, etc., etc., on a different part of the globe smoothly, and they will be able to run the simulation from there.
And I believe we also support version control for the models. If a user, like if a new user comes along and changes the parameters or something, is there a way to handle the version control of the models?
So not yet, but the thing is, we have a defined set of permissions on GTPlay. So as an administrator, you would be able to define what we call roles, basically, that will allow this or this user to have this or this permission. And along with this permission, you will have the update of the model library. So if you want only the model architects to be able to update these models, you will be able to allow this for a subset of users. And the other subset of users would only be able to create simulation from these models without modifying them. And you can even go deeper into this. I mean, if you have a simulation that you've created as an end user and you want to share it with someone, you would also be able to define if they would be view only or if they could be able to edit the simulation. So you have kind of this granular permission system and sharing capabilities that would allow you for having some control over the contents of your web server. Make sure that these contents are available to only the people that you're interested in, and also make sure that they will not be able to remove them, update them, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We've talked about how web application development in general and GT Play in particular has been an enabler, particularly for people who may not want to spend much time on installing the software and then learning how the software works and trying to figure out the default parameters they might need to be able to run a simulation. So it kind of speedlines all that, and that's great. I want to kind of get both of your perspectives on what has been some of the challenges, be it in the development side or more towards the application side, when it comes to web-based application development and in particular GT Play.
So I can start with that. I think one of the main challenges, especially for GT Play, but to be honest, for any web application, is pretty much you have to have very clear definition and separation of the UI part, the front end, and the back end part, the server. And especially coming from like expanding a traditional desktop application, that can be challenging. Fortunately, the code base that we were working with was in a pretty good shape, and we were able to get everything up and running with minimum effort. But moving, along, adding more features, we still need to be separating all this logic, which is a challenge. Another thing, which is pretty much a big issue in GT Play, is deciding where to draw the line, basically between the ease of use and ease of access, let's say, to someone not familiar with the GT software, and also our users' requirements of wanting to do everything and having an option for everything. So that's kind of tricky, and we are getting there, progressing slowly, adding features without overcomplicating the software.
Bruno, any thoughts on that?
No, I agree with Evripidis, especially on the design part. Again, making sure that the software is intuitive while providing being a big toolbox for the end user, being empowering them into doing pretty much whatever they want. One word also that you may hear a lot when it comes to web application is scalability. You mentioned earlier that regarding simulation, big simulation, DOE, but also when we are dealing with big documents or a huge number of users, you want to make sure that everything is keeping up, and you want to make sure that basically that the software will not crash if we have, let's say, 20, 50, 100 users at the same time working on different documents, or maybe on the same document, etc. You have concurrency issues, etc., etc. So having that many users on a single application, again, Evripidis mentioned load balancing, so there are solutions that we've put in place. But this is also a huge challenge when dealing with a web application.
And I believe we expose a simplified interface as of now, a limited number of features from our main GT Suite software. So do you think this complexity will increase as we add more and more features to GT Play, like as we expose more capabilities of GT Suite?
Inevitably, if we add more and more and more features, at some point, we always need when adding any feature to make sure that it goes into kind of a context within the web application. So if you are adding just a single button, you need to make sure that it's at the right place to make sure that it's intuitive to the end user. And when we are dealing with, again, maybe tens of different features, you want to make sure that they are at the correct place and bundled together to make sure that, again, the user would easily access them. The good thing is that since GT Play is intended at being a simpler application than GT is, basically, we can just get the feedback from the customers and just focus on the feature that they consider very relevant to the end user. And this helps a little bit, let's say, having a more slow development. I don't know if that's pretty much the term, but instead of having tens of features at the same time, you will just have one at the time and make sure that it works correctly. At some point, when we will have a lot of customers on GT Play, obviously we will have more features, we will have more requests. And at this time, we will need to be, again, very smart to make sure that if we are implementing many features at the same time, they are very much implemented in, let's say, in harmony together.
Yeah, that's great. As we wrap up here, I wanted to get your quick thoughts on what do we envision for GT Play in the future? What are some things that are coming up that you're excited about?
So yeah, as you said, I think our main focus in the near future is making GT Play more a part of the whole flow of a use case that can be supported by having a centralized, always-on server that can be right now with the desktop application. So to that end, we're making sure that we can integrate better with third-party systems. Digital twin is a big focus and very much a buzzword at this point. And we're making sure we're supporting these flows. And also we are in the process of exploring to be adding meta model support, machine learning models basically onto GT Play that will greatly increase the, let's say, simulation time and requirements of digital twins, basically, that you have to have very fast running models under some use cases. And also expanding in general in other areas. There are many features we want to be adding. We'll have to basically sort them out as required.
Bruno, you want to add something to that?
No, again, I guess the main challenge with all these features, again, we're talking digital twin, meta models, etc., is, again, to keep it simple. And I guess that's the most exciting part.
Yeah, I'm excited about these features, and this was a very insightful discussion from me, and I'm sure our viewers will find this insightful, interesting. So I would like to thank Bruno Evripidis for for sharing their insights and expertise on this, and it was a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.